study of Judges, we've gotten into the story of Samson. And when you study somebody like Samson, he's sort of hard to figure out. There are things about Samson that you may have thought were true that may or may not actually be true. For example, we assume that since Samson was one of the judges, that his main goal was to serve the Lord. But when you read the stories about Samson, you realize that he was really focused a lot just on doing what he wanted to do for himself. You might think and assume that since he had been made a part of the Nazarite vow even before he was born, that he'd want to follow it to the letter. But that wasn't true. The truth was he seemed to be kind of indifferent about the vow, and he broke every law that was in the vow. And you know, one of the number one assumptions, and you might find this interesting, that most people believe about Samson is that all of his strength came from his hair. And you would think that he was a big, muscle-bound kind of guy. There's nothing in the Bible that says that. In fact, the Bible says that his strength came from the Lord. Anytime you read about Samson about to do one of these big, mighty things, you'll read the phrase, "The Spirit of the Lord came upon him in power." And what I believe is that Samson started buying into his own hype. So when Delilah said, "Where's your strength come from?" he said, "Oh, it's my hair." He forgot that the Lord was the one giving him that strength. And this morning we're going to look at a snapshot from the life of Samson that's going to set up his meeting with the Philistines. And as you look at this story, there may be things in it that you're seeing for the first time, even though you've probably been hearing and reading this story all of your life. So let's look together at Judges 14. We'll start reading in verse 1. It says, Samson went down to Timnah, saw there a young Philistine woman, and when he returned, he said to his father and mother, "I've seen a Philistine woman in Timnah. Now get her for me as my wife." His father and mother replied, "Isn't there an acceptable woman among your relatives or among all our people? Must you go to the uncircumcised Philistines to get a wife?" Well, Samson said to his father, "Get her for me. She's the right one for me." His parents did not know that this was the Lord who was seeking an occasion to confront the Philistines, for at that time they were ruling over Israel. Samson went down to Timnah together with his father and mother. As they approached the vineyards of Timnah, suddenly a young lion came roaring toward him. The Spirit of the Lord came upon him in power, so that he tore the lion apart with his bare hands, as he might have torn a young goat. But he told neither his father nor his mother what he had done. Then he went down and he talked with the woman, and he liked her. And sometime later, when he went back to marry her, he turned aside to look at the lion's carcass, and in it was a swarm of bees and some honey, which he scooped out with his hands and ate as he went along. When he rejoined his parents, he gave them some, and they ate it too, but he did not tell them that he had taken the honey from the lion's carcass. Now his father went down to see the woman, and Samson made a feast there, as was customary for bridegrooms. And when he appeared, he was given 30 companions. "Let me tell you a riddle," Samson said to them. "If you can give me the answer within the 7 days of the feast, I'll give you 30 linen garments and 30 sets of clothes. If you can't tell me the answer, you must give me 30 linen garments and 30 sets of clothes." "Tell us your riddle," they said. "Let's hear it." He replied, "Out of the eaters, something to eat. Out of the strong, something sweet." For 3 days they could not give the answer. On the 4th day they said to Samson's wife, "Coax your husband into explaining the riddle for us, or we will burn you and your father's household to death. Did you invite us here to rob us?" And then Samson's wife threw herself on him, sobbing, "You hate me. You don't really love me. You've given my people a riddle, but you haven't told me the answer." "I haven't explained it to my father or mother," he replied, "so why should I explain it to you?" She cried the whole 7 days of the feast. On the 7th day, he finally told her, because she continued to press him. She in turn explained the riddle to her people. Before sunset on the 7th day, the men of the town said to him, "What is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than a lion?" Samson said to them, "If you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have solved my riddle." And then the Spirit of the Lord came upon him in power. He went down to Ashkelon and struck down 30 of their men, stripped them of their belongings, and gave their clothes to those who had explained the riddle. Burning with anger, he went up to his father's house, and Samson's wife was given to the friend who had attended him at the wedding. Now, in these first few verses, what we're seeing here is not a man that was driven by a call to serve God. what you're seeing is a man being driven by his hormones. He didn't just have a woman that he was attracted to, it was a Philistine woman. Now, why is that such a big deal? Well, in Deuteronomy chapter 7, and starting in verse 2, it says, "When the Lord your God has delivered them over to you, and you have defeated them, you must destroy them totally. Make no treaty with them, and show them no mercy. Do not intermarry with them. Do not give your daughters to their sons, or take their daughters for your sons, for they will turn your sons away from following me to serve other gods. And the Lord's anger will burn against you, and quickly destroy you." So this was a law that was given to the Israelites by God, and every single Israelite should have known about it. And the principle is pretty simple. If you marry someone, and it would be true today, if you marry someone that doesn't share your beliefs and doesn't share your values, you're going to have to naturally, at some point, compromise a little bit to get along. And even if you just take one step away from your beliefs, you're one step farther away from God. And in pretty much every marriage, once that starts, it leads to more compromises that you're going to make in your faith. And you're moving farther and farther away from your faith and farther away from God. And as I mentioned last week, this was one of the ways that the Philistines were actually controlling Samson's people, the Israelites, and he was following suit with what they were doing. And when Samson's parents tried to draw him back into the command, and they said, "You mean to tell us you can't find an Israelite woman to marry?" He disrespected his parents. And he had, I think, a sense of selfishness that if you haven't thought of Samson this way, it might surprise you. All he had to say was, "Go get her. Go get her for me." He was a self-absorbed man. All he wanted was what seemed to seem good to him in that moment.